Okay, I now have 2 o'clock according to my Zoom or whatever it's called. Surface. So, we will, we'll call this meeting of the Resource Planning Committee to order.
Hearing.
No, it says meeting. It is a hearing, but it says meeting, so I'll read it as it is, but you're probably right. Anyway, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a hearing conducted by the Resource Planning Committee of the Door County Board of Supervisors. My name is Ken Fisher. I am the chair of this committee and represent District 10, which is in the city of Sturgeon Bay. I'll have the other committee members introduce themselves.
Mark Miller, District 12, Sturgeon Bay.
Susan Kohout, District 6, Town of Sturgeon Bay, and a section of Town of Nassau-Waupee.
Dave Anagle, District 17's portion, the Village of Egg Harbor, portions of the Town of Egg Harbor, Town of Jackson Part, and Town of Bailey's Harbor.
What? I already said I'm Ken Fisher.
Okay, I'm Don City, District 19, which is part of Bailey's Harbor and part of Liberty Grove.
And this is Mariah Goode and Sue Van Langenberg. Zoning administrator, Mariah is the planning director, Sue is the zoning administrator too, and they will serve as clerks this afternoon. The purpose of this hearing is to gather testimony on the various cases on today's agenda. You are encouraged to explain how your interests are affected, how the public is affected, and to bring out any facts pertinent to the case related to public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare. There's one type of case on today's agenda, conditional use. In the case of the conditional use permit application, the Resource Planning Committee will hold this hearing, and we will make the decision at a regular open meeting in the near future, likely later this afternoon if time allows, and I'm sure it will. These decisions are normally final but may be appealed to the Door County Board of Adjustment. The procedure which we will use this afternoon is in conducting this hearing is as follows. I will read the legal notice and will then call on the clerk for an explanation of the case. Resource Planning Committee members will then report any background information they have. There will be 2 rounds of testimony from those of you in attendance. The applicant will go first, followed by others in favor. Those in opposition will speak second. Persons with only questions or concerns should speak as if they are in opposition. The second round is for the purpose of rebuttal. Only those who spoke in the first round may speak in rebuttal. Because of the need to prepare a clear record of your testimony, I ask that only one person come to the table at a time. If you want to testify, please come forward, state your name and address, and then present your testimony. Statements from the back of the room and exchanges between parties will not be allowed. Speakers presenting repetitive or irrelevant testimony will be excused from the table. Following this afternoon's hearings, the committee will adjourn and reconvene to its regular business meeting. You may observe those proceedings but may not participate in them. Please take this opportunity to silence cell phones, pagers, and similar devices. Okay. Let's see what's here. Okay. Town of Sevastopol, Northeast Asphalt Incorporated requests a conditional use permit as required by Door County zoning ordinance sections 2.05 sub 3 sub A, 4.05 sub 7, and 11.04. Northeast Asphalt Incorporated proposes to establish a temporary asphalt plant within the existing non-metallic mine located at 4429 Matthew Road in section 22, town 28 north, range 26 east, and in a prime agricultural or PA zoning district.
Okay, so this case may sound familiar. We have seen conditional use applications in the past. The air photo we have up, and I don't have a pointer today. The 2 parcels are highlighted in yellow, and as you can see, they're centrally located between Highway 42 to the west, Highway 57 to the south and the east, and County Highway P to the north. The community of Institute is to the northeast. Other landmarks that may be familiar to you are the farm, which is located just to the southeast on Highway 57. Going to the zoning map on page 14, you'll see that the majority of the area in Sevastopol here is zoned prime agricultural, made up of relatively large lots, some low-density residential intermixed, with the exception of some countryside and estate to the east and to the southeast. moving forward, the conditional use project is for some paving projects that are proposed along Highway 42 and other various town road work within Door County. As I mentioned, permits have been obtained in 95, 2000, 2014 on this site. If we look at the close-up site plan air photo on page 16, Mariah's already there, you can see where the approximate location will be within the existing non-metallic mine. There is a current, up-to-date non-metallic mining reclamation permit, which they are in compliance with. There are no issues or concerns from SWCD, who is the entity that takes care of that process. What we've done, and we always do in our staff report, we make recommendations for possible conditions and or give you ideas of conditions that were placed on permits in the past. So you'll see that it's on page 20 of your packet. With a temporary asphalt permit, we do need to have the committee specify a time frame in which that permit is for, since it is temporary. So I'll point you to condition number 1 to keep that in mind. I'm not going to go through each one of these. They have been issued in the past, and I know you've looked at this previously. The town is still concerned and would like to place a condition such that Rip Road is not used for this use, which that has been a condition in the past. One other comment that the town had made is that they would like Northeast Asphalt to be responsible for repair to the town road if there's any damages. And in the past, our county corporation council has told us we don't have the authority to do that. The town could put a special assessment on that, but we don't have that ability. So I just wanted to point that out to you.
Would we have the ability to do that on County P as a county road?
I don't know the process by which that would be done, and I would consult with Grant
Okay.
with any of that. We haven't ever done that in the past with all the other permits.
I'm just curious if he was referring to the city, the town, which I understand, but I was wondering if it applied to the county also. Okay.
That condition, I don't believe, has ever been
Never been
placed on
used.
any of the permits that we've authorized.
Not that I'm asking, I'm just curious. If
Yep.
There probably is a legal argument that you could do it because the county, that's the county road.
That's exactly- that's what I was
But
getting
we
at,
can't
yeah.
tell somebody what to pay the town.
Exactly, that's, I was wondering if that was a
But yeah, I don't
differentiated.
think we've heard on that.
Okay.
And unless Mariah has anything to add to those possible conditions, I'm gonna turn it over to Mariah for the planning considerations.
Very brief planning considerations, since this is temporary, there's obviously not a long-term or major impact. It's already a site that's very disturbed, being a non-metallic mine. So there's nothing really that's relevant in the plan as far as goals or objectives or things that you need to be concerned about. And as Sue pointed out, there's already a reclamation plan in place that Soil and Water monitors and will oversee as it's installed for the site. And it's designated as rural agricultural on the future land use map, which, I mean, non-metallic mining is something that's allowed and this activity within that, so that's all I have.
Okay, any questions by anybody on the committee on that? No? Okay, would the applicant please come forward?
Matt Matuzak, Northeast Asphalt, 1524 Atkinson Drive, Green Bay, 54303. As you know, we are here to ask for approval on a conditional use permit to operate our temporary asphalt plant. The reason for this is because we have already in contract with the town of Liberty Grove, DOT work for the roundabouts and whatnot that's going on. We're expecting some Door County FOB, and also recently just found out that the town of Sevastopol themselves are interested in doing some work, so we're hoping to possibly provide for them as well. We are looking to start as soon as possible. We're actually even ready to start bringing in pieces of equipment as early as tomorrow or next week. So we are looking forward to your approval. We intend to try and be done before the 4th of July weekend. However, with some of the additional potential work, we could go a little bit later than that. And also Mother Nature, as you know, sometimes isn't always in our favor, so.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I say something here?
Sure.
Have you been contacted by the town of Bailey's Harbor? The reason
John
I-
might be able to.
The reason I'm saying this is because I am the town chairman of Bailey's Harbor. Does that pose a conflict of interest? Just a question.
Can you be objective?
Sure.
Then it's all right.
No, I mean, you're not gonna personally financially benefit.
Well, we've had these cases before, and I have voted on these cases
Yes, it's
before,
perfectly all right.
but I want to make sure that, for the record,
You're not financially connected to either entity, so.
I wish I was, but I'm not. Thank you, I'm sorry.
No problem. I guess just a couple other key things. The plant was, our asphalt plant was in there as recent as 2014. It sat stagnant over the winter, and we finished up work in spring of 2015. And then we were in there, as you have nicely mentioned in some of your notes, that we've been in there several years before that as well. We're unaware of any formal complaints or concerns, that sort of thing, the last time we were there. So we'd like to continue operating status quo. The town of Sevastopol did recommend approval, and as was mentioned, some of the added conditions, and we are open to those, and even if you can't vote on some of that stuff, then we're still willing to work with the town on that, of addressing those types of things. Other than that, I do have a copy.
You did leave that door open, right?
It's open.
I do have a copy of our general air permit and stormwater permit. Those were requirements on your conditions the last time we were here for approval. So these are specific to the plant that we intend on bringing in. So you'll already have those in your possession, and I would be happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
I do.
Other than Don, because he already asked one? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
It's really a stupid question. I
Oh,
know what
really?
I know what the machine is. On 14, you say, will any of the structures be served by propane or natural gas? And you said neither.
That's correct. We run off of
Diesel?
petroleum fuel, yeah.
I forgot about that option.
Is there any difference in granting you a permit, let's say, I think it was 5 years ago or a year's past, the type of system or unit that you're putting up this year, is it the same type of thing, or?
Yeah, actually, it is the exact same type of thing. It rolls in on wheels. We erect the silo and that sort of thing, and we set it all up. Everything's temporary, and we can bring everything back down and roll it on back out to go on to the next project. So yes, it is essentially the exact same thing.
Thank you.
Susie?
Okay, so I just want to clarify what I think I heard you say, that even though we can't put a condition in here about repairing road damage,
Mhm.
you would be willing to work with the town of Sevastopol if there is road damage?
Absolutely.
And help them repair?
Yep, we like to be good neighbors, so we would definitely be open to that.
Any other questions? I only have one. Where's your plant located right now?
Wittenberg.
Wittenberg. So west of Green Bay by, that's probably about 45 minutes.
The reason I ask is because if it was south of Sturgeon Bay, I was gonna say, it's not a small unit. Good luck
Correct.
getting it through Sturgeon
Yep.
Bay. Don't go over the Michigan Street
Oh,
Bridge.
please,
Yeah,
please,
no,
no, I
please
don't
do
care if
not.
it fits underneath it or not.
No, we don't want to be that guy.
No, we've already had that guy.
Yeah, I know.
I was just curious. It's gonna be.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
I'm
we
sure
are
you've
aware of
taken
that.
it through the city before. but-
Yes, absolutely. We're prepared to do that.
Okay, real good. No other questions? Thank you then.
Thank you.
Are these for this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the proposal?
Good afternoon, all. My name is John Leach with Northeast Asphalt. Matt did a fine job with presenting. Timing-wise, I just would emphasize that with Mother Nature and weather, with what we have going on. The timing, the back-end timing of this, like Matt had stated, the upfront timing is as soon as possible for us is most advantageous for the state work that's out there right now. And on the back side of it, even if it was that August 1st or August 15th timeframe, at a very extreme time frame would be helpful. Even though this plant is slated already to be up in Lilly and the northern Wisconsin area here by the latest mid-July, but Mother Nature can throw a zinger at us once in a while, so,
Certainly, by 90 days, you'd be done.
yes.
That'd be, you would not need, would probably, when we talk on conditions, I would imagine we'd discuss it, and probably go with the 90 days.
Okay, that sounds fair.
And the hours you're comfortable with?
Hours we're comfortable with that were previously stated, which I believe was 6 to 8, Monday through Friday, and 6 to 2 on Saturdays. So that would work out very well for us. No night work on this that we know of it either.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Yep, sounds good, thanks.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the proposal?
Bud Collins, Administrator for Town of Liberty Grove at 11161 Old Stage Road. Did you get my letter that I sent out?
Yes.
In addition to the location and the advantageous price with being located north of Sturgeon Bay, we had specified when we bid the paving out this year that we wanted it done by the middle of June in order to avoid the rush in the summer up there with all the vehicles, pedestrians, and whatever else comes along with it. So along with that, we'd appreciate it if the permit could be issued so they could get this thing going and get it done by the middle of June, if not sooner. I understand that they hope to have one lift down on our 5 miles of road by Memorial Day, so that could work.
Okay, good, Susie.
I'd just like to say that when I heard Liberty Grove was gonna have a roundabout, I'm really relieved Sturgeon Bay's having one too. We wouldn't want Liberty Grove to have one if we didn't down here.
Or at least not first.
Well, it sounds like you could be first, but whatever.
Okay, we gotta figure out where to put it now.
Any pertinent questions?
Don, you can't speak then.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will ask, but there are no other people here. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? No. No need for rebuttal then. Then we'll close off this hearing and we will move into our regular scheduled meeting. Okay. Verification of proper notice and posting procedures.
Yep.
Everything's okay. Quorum present, it should be noted that all 5 members are present. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, okay. Public comment, is there anybody wishing to, there is nobody here, so we'll forego that. Nobody here that hasn't spoke already. Didn't mean to be disrespectful. Any other correspondence?
No.
Okay. Read and act on the minutes of May 5, 2016 meeting. We won't read them, but I will take a motion to approve those minutes.
I move to approve them, but I do have a question about one.
That will come up.
I'll second it.
Okay, are there any questions, comments, corrections?
Yeah, it's true that David couldn't be on this because he's county board chair? Is that
No,
accurate?
he chose not to be.
Well, okay, the minutes though say
Oh,
that he no longer has the ability to serve on RPC as county board chair, and that surprised me.
Oh, yeah,
that's probably my phrasing.
yeah.
Correct.
I'm gonna say
He chose not to.
no longer
Well, and
can.
that's fine, I just didn't know that went with county board chair,
No.
so, okay.
Oh, he could
Do you want me
serve
to
on
read it?
every committee if he wanted
Once,
to.
yeah.
So
So,
I didn't read it the way she did, but I did think it was kind of an odd sentence, but I
Do-
didn't worry about it.
do you want to
Okay,
change
ready?
it then?
Well, I think as it's written,
It should be that Dave chose not to be.
Okay.
yeah, or just that David Leno is
Yeah,
no
the last-
longer
Yes.
on.
Yeah, Mark.
So really, just the as county board sentence could be removed.
I wanted to not make it sound like he was just dumping you. but
Oh.
I think was why I
And
went
Mark Miller is the new.
We were forced to have Mark instead, so.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
not
so
what
how do
Dave
you want me to
said,
say,
All right.
as county board chair, Lino has chosen?
Chosen
Yes,
not
there
to.
you
Chosen
go,
not to
there you
serve.
go, perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or corrections on it? Comments? No? Hearing none? All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Zoning matters, Northeast Asphalt, conditional use permit.
I'd make a motion to recommend approval of the conditional use contingent upon the conditions that the planning department recommended.
With a 90-day term,
We need a second first.
90-day.
I'll second it.
Right, 90 days would be good, get them in the middle of August, so that would be within the dates they were asking for. Whatever the heck it
20.
was the operating,
Page 20.
You
I
wanna go
typed
page?
20, but it didn't go there.
And the hours of operation are the same as we've always done?
For that, yeah.
And that was,
Actually, yeah, I think that matches the last couple that we've done in different locations too.
Everybody okay with that?
did-
Is there a second there?
Yeah, I don't think.
I second
Oh,
it.
second by Susan.
I don't think there was anything else you needed to decide, we just put italics, and just so you know, Mark, that's what we do in our staff reports when we suggest a condition, if there's something in italics that's like a note from us to you guys, either you need to choose something here, or there's just further information, so. And we try, if there's been a permit like that before, we try and make a note that that condition is relatively standard.
Okay.
So number 5, it's the non-italicized sentencing is perfect. That keeps them off the rip road anyway.
So all 7 conditions is what you're.
Everybody okay with that?
Fine.
And that being said, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes.
So how fast can you issue one for tomorrow? Or is-
Did they give you everything you need for those 2 conditions?
That's what I wanna read through them closely.
Make sure they're right.
If they're submitted, I would be able to issue as soon as tomorrow, but I'll look through them, I'm sure
Yeah, 'cause
they
there's-
gave
I
you
would just
what
ask
you
one
needed.
question. If all of a sudden they get a lot of requests, so they need to keep it there for more than 90 days, do they have some way of doing that?
They have
Coming
to do
back
another
here.
Coming
hearing.
back with a new hearing.
Change
Yeah.
of the hours, or days, I mean.
Yeah, and as Grant has offered his opinion in the last couple of years, if any of the conditions are gonna change, then it needs to be a new hearing, so.
You're absolutely sure 90 days is enough?
Thought we voted on it already.
We did, but as a yes vote, I can make a motion to reopen it, and I'd rather do that now and give
That's
them a
right, I
few
agree.
more days or
Right.
another month, rather than them have to come back again
Make
to.
it 120?
120, that would be a for sure. I think that would
That
cover.
would give you
the-
mid-September.
That being said, I'll reopen the discussion.
I'll second his reconsideration
Okay,
motion.
all in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then I would change that to 120 days.
Okay,
Thank you.
Makes
so then do I
sense.
need a new motion for the new motion for the
Yes.
motion?
Okay,
Right, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, and so 120, got it. Okay,
all those in favor of the motion on the floor, the current motion on the floor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Never know, we could have monsoon season this year. Who knows?
Well, they could pick up a lot of business and
Yeah,
have to go,
that's true.
why waste, you know,
Right.
the money and the time to come back and do it again?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, 6.2, update on changes to planning and zoning laws due to recent legislation.
all right, I didn't send you anything in your packet. Whoops, I did this wrong. I emailed you yesterday, because I just got it this week, a handy dandy packet that was put together by EW Extension. Every year in May, they do a webinar that we always sign up for that summarizes all the case law and legislation that's come out that's planning and zoning related. There's a lot of it this year. So we're not gonna spend a ton of time on this, but I figured I would just point out the things that, when or if you get a chance to go through this, that these would be the things that you might wanna look a little bit more closely at. So in the email that I sent, and I didn't have time to get this posted as a packet, but in the email that I sent, starting on page 17, there's a case about sign ordinances, which I don't know if you've heard me refer to this or not, but it's Reed versus the town of Gilbert. This is actually a US Supreme Court case from last year, which is causing municipalities all over the entire country to have to rewrite their sign regulations. Because basically what it says is that if you have to read the sign to determine how to regulate it, then that regulation is not okay. So,
What?
because
What?
so for example, if
Thank
we have
you.
in our
Now I feel better that I'm not
Okay.
the only
I'll
one.
give you-
I'll
give
say
you-
what also, but I'm aware of it.
I'll give you a bunch of examples. So, for example, in our sign chapter in our ordinance, we regulate real estate signs a certain way. They're only allowed to be certain sizes and that kind of thing, but they don't require permits. We regulate temporary new development signs. So somebody's doing a new subdivision or a new development, and the builder has their sign out, and those are regulated in a certain way, and they're regulated differently than the real estate signs are. We've got election campaign signs, which actually, there's a whole big section in the state statutes about election signs and how big those can be, and it's different between commercial and residential properties, and they don't require permits in some cases, and in other cases they do, and they can only be up for a certain amount of time. And now it appears as if that stuff might all get thrown out the window as well. So the reason I'm bringing this up to your attention is that we're in the midst of completely rewriting the sign chapter in our ordinance, because we regulate a lot of things based on what they say. So for another example, we exempt, if you want to have a little tiny open or closed sign in the window of your business, don't regulate that. If you want to have no trespassing signs, just the standard kind of small, what is it? Is it under 4 square feet that we don't regulate, or 2?
I would have to double check.
It's okay. I mean, but we have a lot of things
Nameplates.
that, depending on the type of sign, if you're under 6 or 4 or 2 square feet, and these are the types of messages that you're displaying, we don't regulate them. But this is saying that we're gonna have to treat those all the same. So we need to figure out what we're gonna do with that kind of stuff. Okay, 4 square feet.
Treat every single kind of sign the same?
No, you're allowed to still distinguish, although you still have to read them, as a couple of zoning administrators have pointed out. You can still regulate off-premise versus on-premise differently, although you still have to read them to figure out whether it's an on or an off-premise sign. But they did specifically say you can do that. But the case, this specific case had to do with a church that didn't have a building, and so they just met in different places around the community, and they would put out a sign X number of days ahead of time saying, Church Y is meeting here next Saturday, and they'd leave the sign up for a week or whatever. And they sued because they were contending that the municipality was treating them differently than political signs and other advertising signs. And then that went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yep, you're right, you're being treated differently. All these types of signs need to be treated the same. So it's extremely challenging to try and read our sign chapter right now and figure out what regulations we're still gonna be able to have. But that's what we're working on. So that case, I wanted to just let you know that there is discussion in here about that. And like I said, it's on bottom of page, well, the PDF file is page 17, but the numbered page is 15. So stay tuned, because we will be bringing back our sign chapter for you to look at.
And remind me of what some of the state regulations are relative to the political signs.
Well,
if I
that's going to
remember
be, we're in the midst
correctly.
of that too, so.
Because I think you can own almost any size sign without needing a permit to do it for.
If it's a residence,
campaign.
so, and we run into this every big election, which I'm sure this year's not gonna be any different.
4x8 signs in the middle of
You're-
nowhere.
I'm not gonna be able to get all of the parameters, but if you're a residential property, you can put any size campaign sign up that you want with no permit. I think you are limited in terms of the number of days ahead of time that you can put it up,
It
and
has to be
you
done
have to
the
take
next
it
day.
down within like 7 or 10 days or something after the election.
And
If
it
you're-
can't be in the right of way.
Right. If you're a commercial property, you technically actually, I think, need a permit, and you are limited to the size sign that you're putting up for if it's a political sign. And then I don't remember if the span are the same or not. In reality, we have almost never attempted to do anything other than just distribute the information to the town clerks to let them know, and to Jill to let her disseminate that. we do get a lot of calls from people complaining about the other party's signs, and so then when people bring complaints to us, we go, through the process that we're supposed to get them in compliance, but it's almost impossible.
But you just
to
mentioned
regulate.
residential and commercial, no, there's residence and commercial. What about all the open field signs?
I don't know how they would treat that. Those are probably, I guess, I don't know whether we'd look at the assessment or how that would work. But I'm pretty sure, I don't know if the statute mentions agricultural.
And most people have,
They
if
probably-
they have ordinances, they don't deal with the political ones because the state has those
Right.
regulations.
Well, and we already were looking before this court case, we were already thinking that we were gonna rewrite that chapter because there's a bunch of things in a couple of the overlays that are internally inconsistent. Grant, before this was happening, was saying that there's a couple of things in the election campaign thing that he didn't think were up to date with what were in the state code, but now it all needs to be redone anyway, and they're not even sure they can have the state regulations the way that they are, so stay tuned. I'm gonna jump down now, and Brian, the person that put this together, is a professor, probably the most knowledgeable person in the state about Wisconsin's planning and zoning laws. He's got all the federal stuff in here too, so a lot of this, you really could just read like a sentence or two and be done with it if you don't wanna look at it, but page, okay, maybe not. Page, it's gonna be 28 or 29. Yeah, page 28 in the packet actually is gonna be the thing that's gonna be the most helpful for us, and if you feel possessed to read all this stuff on your own, for you as well. So what he did was he listed everything from the 2015-16 Wisconsin legislative session that's in any way related to planning, zoning, or land use. He's got some water related and water protection ones in here as well. And then there's links to all the PDFs. So you probably, for most of these, don't want, or need, for 90% of them, don't want to or need to read anything other than the one sentence that he's got here that kind of summarizes what that act does. But I made a list of the ones where we've been paying attention to them, or there might be some things that we're going to have to worry about. There's also, and you probably already know about these as well, there's analytical documents that are put out by the Wisconsin Legislative Council with regard to each bill once it's adopted, that are, if you wanted to read that instead of going and reading the PDF file, like you can read the one sentence, see if you want to read further, because the Wisconsin Legislative Council thing is going to say, this is what the law used to say about this topic, this is what this new bill does, rather than you having to try and go through and read the statute language. So those are good links to have.
I found it quite interesting, the second one down.
Incorporated. Have you gotten fired, Dave? No, I didn't even notice that.
No, I have to reread that a little bit, but if it's what I think it is, it's tied to the town's efforts a few years back to become a village.
I just thought I'd point that out.
Well, and if you skim
I
through all of
didn't
these,
notice it till just now
there are
either,
a
so.
lot of them that are very, very specific
I hope that
to
was
a
pertinent.
town, which is, yeah.
Dave, I
So,
hope that was pertinent.
might be pertinent in his life.
No, not at all. It's an incorporation, which is changing from town status to other
Well,
status.
So, did you have a question about one that I just whizzed
No.
by?
I was looking at an even more specific one, the Basilica of Saint Jehoshaphat.
Well, when you and I didn't even know until I read through all of these. Well, anyway, you go through and read them and make whatever.
I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce that.
You know, but you look at the
Joseph,
second one that's
Joseph.
on
Yeah,
the
it looks
screen
like they
there,
spelled it wrong, actually.
Act 29. This is an example in my mind of our legislature's stupidity. The commercial council, the state of Wisconsin created a commercial building code council, which is what I sit on. They mislabeled it and had
So
to
they
do
need
exactly
to-
the same thing.
Really?
What do you mean? What was mislabeled? This,
Well, just like this, it's called a dwelling code council, right? Hasn't been called that for a long time. It's been a unified dwelling code council for a long time. And
So
even
when
the
did they need
building
to
code
renew
council,
it?
there it is, there's the other half of it. There's where I'm sitting in right now. Those are errors made. It's always been
In
the second
statutory
two
language
names.
previously, you mean?
It's always been the second two names. It is errors made by somebody, and they have to go to this level in order to correct it.
Well, and there's others in here that are probably even sillier as I was reading through them.
Well, the
earlier.
one above it, Act 25, is interesting too. What a resident.
Yeah,
Is
and-
not a member of the governing body of the largest local government.
I don't know what that's about. I think that it's something from one of the other counties in maybe the western or northern part of the state that have a lot of lake districts where they had boards that kind of, not zoning wise, but that dealt with different uses and things like that around the lakes. But yeah, it's kind of interesting reading through this stuff. So, but the ones that I wanted to point out to you, so Wisconsin Act 41, if you'll recall, a handful of years ago there was a court case called Hegwood, and that was where it was ruled by the appellate court. Yeah. I'm gonna forget. It did not go to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court declined to hear it, so the appellate court ruling stands. It was ruled by the appellate court that only counties have the ability to do zoning in shoreland areas in towns. So then that caused all sorts of confusion because there are a lot of towns that have town level zoning where the counties only do the shoreland standards, and the towns weren't clear whether or not they could be doing any zoning, like their farmland preservation or what Union and Brussels are doing and that kind of thing. So this act was the attempt, which I think it did, to clarify that counties are in charge of shoreland zoning standards as they're laid out in NR 115. Towns can have, if they've gone through the right processes, a town level zoning ordinance that they're enforcing in the shoreland area, but it can't have any shoreland standards. So they can't do water setbacks, they can't do anything related to the non-conforming structure stuff that's in the statutes now. But they can do uses and they can have setbacks from side and road and all that kind of stuff. So that's what Act 41 does. Then the next one, Act 55, you've obviously all heard of because that's the budget bill that changed all sorts of stuff last year. I'm not going to go into that in detail. I mean, basically what that did was made NR 115 the standard as opposed to the minimum. And then, we haven't really worried about some of the other stuff because we don't worry about historic rehabilitation and that kind of stuff, but changed ability for non-conforming structures to be replaced, made everything go into effect instantly, which is why there's been such confusion and chaos for the past year. But so Act 55 is the budget bill. The next one of any interest, which although it's really not going to end up being that helpful, Act 79. We can now do publication. Oh, wait a minute, I thought this was a different one. Well, anyway, we can do legal notices on the internet site maintained by the municipality, but I mean, I don't know that it really helps us do anything because we already just email it to the different buildings between sheriff and clerk and library, I think, for them to post.
Well, it helps places like us where
Right, you guys don't have
drive
to,
less.
right, you can only just, instead of 3 or whatever, you can just go to 2. Yeah, for us, it's
Actually, 1.
not a big deal.
Actually,
That
105 is
Oops.
interesting because that would have eliminated Liberty Grove's controversy in spending on roads. You don't have to have a special town meeting now to override.
To go. Yeah, and I don't know much about that one, so I don't know if they set a higher dollar amount or if they just got rid of.
No, it was 5,000 per mile was the maximum.
Right, I don't know if the bill.
And then you have to have a special motion to override that.
Okay.
That's where Liberty Grove came into play.
146 doesn't affect us at all, but just as to show you examples of there are very much town-specific things that are being put into the law that relate to planning and zoning. So the whole theory of having the budget bill make everything be uniform and everybody has to do the same thing is already kind of being thrown out the window. And this relates to the budget bill and the one that I just pointed out, Act 41. Madeline Island is allowed to do shoreline zoning, and that means water setback and non-conforming structure regulations and everything
And
else.
be more restrictive.
Right, yeah.
That's
So-
in Douglas County. That's not in Douglas County.
Well,
Is that Bayfield?
Bayfield.
It's
Bayfield.
Bayfield.
Yeah.
Bayfield is
Right.
Douglas County. Madeline Island is in Ashland.
Well, and I know for sure that it's Madeline Island, so.
Yeah, it is,
he's
it is.
got the
I know
wrong
that too.
county,
but
'cause,
Madeline
yeah.
Island is the island that came to legislative committee
Yes.
because they wanted.
Oh, they tried to get Washington.
So, and
Yeah.
then the guy who talked to us said they're not in the county you'd expect them to
No,
be
they're not in Douglas.
They
They're
have
in
to cross
Ashland.
that county to get to the county they're actually in.
They're actually in
So they
Ashland.
might be
Maybe
at
it
one
does.
point.
I guess I just assumed it was in.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Bayfield.
people lived there for 4
But at any
years.
rate, so this is everything is not uniform and consistent across the state. Excuse me.
What a nightmare.
So as far as things that are a little bit more relevant to us, Act 167, this one just got signed and went into effect at the end of April,
Yeah, Ashland
I
County.
think.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Douglas is right next door, which is where
Right.
Bayfield is.
Well, anyway, I know it definitely applies to Madeline, not to.
Yeah, I know that's what it is. I just find it interesting there was a typo.
Okay. So Act 167 is another one. This was the one that Joel Kitchens worked on with Adam Jarko and Frank Lassay to try and clean up some of the stuff that they did that was unintentional or unforeseen by the budget bill. So it modified the regulations with regard to designating highly developed shorelines, which are, if you designate those, you're allowed to have higher impervious surface ratios in the shoreland area. It's kind of a moot point to some extent because you can go above the number if you put in a stormwater plan, no matter where you are. So it also, a lot of the counties, Door County did not do this, but a lot of the counties had larger setbacks from the water than 75 feet. And they're allowing those counties in some instances to continue to have that larger setback from the water, so once again, not going to be the same across the state. And then it exempts, what else did it exempt?
From the ISR calculation.
Yes, roads and public sidewalks now no longer need to be included when you're doing impervious surface calculations, which is a good thing. We asked for that also. A couple other things in here, I can't remember the exact specifics, but so this was more or less cleaned up a couple of things that were not so great about the budget bill. Act 176 doesn't affect us, the county, because we don't do historic preservation, but some of the communities in the county do, like City of Sturgeon Bay has historic preservation districts, and I know some of the towns have thought about looking at having a district, and so it changes the way that you can set that district up and what has to happen for something to be designated to be within the district. 178, again, does not affect us at all, but another example of changing the law just for one place. This allows Dane County, towns that are in Dane County, to withdraw from county zoning by a totally different procedure than the rest of the state has to go by for towns to be able to get out of county zoning.
And that's only because the city has more representation than the rest of the towns do.
On the board, I think, yeah. Well, they're
So
rewriting their ordinance anyway.
The city was overriding just about everything.
Yeah,
What's going on?
they're doing Dane County,
That
as I
too.
understand it, is doing a comprehensive revision. The way the statutes are set up, once you join county zoning, you can't leave unless a comprehensive revision is done to the zoning ordinance. The theory, I think, being that you knew what you were getting into when you joined, you approved these maps and this text, and that's what you get, and it's to protect you from the county just sort of willy-nilly changing everything completely. So if the county changes everything, then you can get out. And Dane County is doing a comprehensive revision, so all these towns could get out anyway, so I'm not really sure why that bill was necessary. But 214 is the one that I thought I was looking at before. This is the one that, in theory, should be helpful to us, but it's really not going to be. There's a lot of notifications that we have to do when we're bringing things to you, mostly for map and text amendments, where we need to be notifying town clerks about what's going on, and the statutes sometimes require certified mail, sometimes require registered mail. I think that's one of the topics that's being looked at by
A work
that
study
body.
committee.
Yeah.
Yep.
This allows the county clerk to use electronic methods to notify those town clerks of those actions. So like if we're gonna do a text amendment that you guys are sponsoring, or that anybody's sponsoring, if it's gonna affect all 14 towns, we send either a registered or a certified letter to the 14 towns, because that's what we're required to do, and then there's another one that comes later. This says you can use email, but it's gotta come from the clerk. Like right now, we write the letter on Jill's letterhead, and we looked into with IS if there'd be a way for Jill to not be the one getting bombarded with all the read receipt emails and the responses, and there's not a way to set it up to have it come to us, so we're still gonna be mailing things.
And the reason she brings that up, because it is up to the clerk, once that gets sent out, if she does not get a response, or he, within 5 days, we have to send out the certified mail anyways, and
Right,
there's
so we don't
no
wanna have
way we're
Jill to
gonna
have to
require
Just be
Jill
done with it and do
Yeah.
certified
to do
start.
all this
Yeah,
work.
I think they did, and I always forget which is which. Whichever one is the
It's-
most expensive, they just changed it to the one that's lesser. I always forget which one is registered
I
versus
believe it was
certified, but-
registered, we have been doing certified, which is still
Certified
$8 a pop
more.
on some of these
Yeah.
mailings, and we do it twice per case.
Yeah.
So right now, all of your legal notices are coming out under the name of the county clerk, even though your office generates them?
Not the legal notices, but the
Hearing
letters that we
notice.
send to, where we have to officially notify the town
Right.
clerks
Property.
that there's an amendment that affects your area. Those have to go, yeah. And the town clerks don't like it either because they have to go to the post office to get
Mhm.
the letter, and that's not always convenient either. Act 223. We haven't actually thought of any places that this affects in Door County yet, but it might, and you may see one of these cases along the way. Basically, it's a bill that precludes a community from preventing the complete replacement of a manufactured home park, manufactured home in a manufactured home park. So for example, if manufactured home parks in our ordinance are conditional uses, so if somebody was gonna take an old one down and put a new one up, or one that got apparently blown over or destroyed by vandalism, or you would do a conditional use permit hearing. I don't know that you would, but you would have the legal authority to deny that permit. This basically says that you can't, that you have to allow them to replace it.
If they're the same footprint?
I
It
don't
seems
think
like
that's
we hear a
clear.
lot of testimony, or maybe it was when I was on BOA,
About-
about how the current size of a manufactured home,
Are
you
a lot
almost
different.
can't get one that size anymore, so you
Yeah,
have
we
to keep
have-
getting variances to get bigger.
I
Yeah.
have that problem in a lot of my areas.
And this says you have to
But
accept the bigger ones?
This has to do, I believe, with non-conforming uses. So in the single-family residential district, our ordinance doesn't allow a manufactured home park. So if there was one in the SF20 district, it would require that conditional use, and it's saying that you can't deny that, basically.
And so far, like I said, we haven't thought of any, but there might be one out there that we just haven't
I
thought of
think
that are.
the variance process and the setbacks, I don't think that addresses
Oh,
it,
okay,
but I would
okay,
have to
just-
look into that,
okay.
because we have that situation where there's many mobile homes
Oh,
tied
yeah,
up to a
Southern
lot
Door,
line.
goodness.
And the sizes, yeah, they have so many problems trying to find a size to fit in that
Mhm.
space.
It says here in the act itself that the structure will be restored to or replaced at the size subject to subdivision locations and use that it had immediately before the damage or destruction occurred.
Yeah, it might not help people that might still need variances then. And like I said, that may not affect Door County because we so far haven't thought of anything, but we haven't gone and researched all of them either. Okay, the last two that I want to point out, there's a whole lot of them. Actually, this one I found this interesting, not because anybody in Door County outside of the city does like tax increment financing districts. But so what is it again? The Legislative Council that takes on issues to kind of study over a number of months to then propose legislation. I don't know a whole lot about this topic, so I don't know if the consensus is that these bills are a good thing or make things, or at least if they're clear and consistent. But so tax increment, districts, there's a whole slew of bills that got proposed because of a legislative council study that went on for a number of months. And I really wish that this is what they had done with zoning, because it seems like things would be a lot more consistent and easy to follow, and it would have all happened at once, and rather than all this piecemeal stuff. But okay, 387. Let's go down to that one. This one, at the moment, we don't think that this is going to affect us. It has to do with what's considered navigable and what the DNR can regulate. And we've never, if somebody digs a ditch somewhere, as long as it's not connecting up with navigable streams or lakes or whatever, we've not ever considered that ditch navigable. So we've already been complying or doing some of this stuff anyway. And again, this mostly relates to the DNR, but it does change some things that the DNR has to do when they're analyzing permits where people want to fill a wetland. And we have, all of our wetland regulations are based on what was the state language. So far we're not being told that we have to change ours. But I don't know that that may still happen, because I can see situations where people are gonna be told by the DNR, oh yeah, you can go ahead and fill that wetland, and our regulations are gonna say, no, you can't, and then that's either gonna end up being another lawsuit or a bill or who knows what. So that one, we're keeping an eye on what happens with regard to the fallout from that one. And it's things like, well, and it's not very clear when you read it too. It has to do with wetland. It has to do with projects that affect less than 2 acres of wetlands. And I don't know if that means that the wetland has to be less than 2 acres, or you're only affecting 2 acres of a larger wetland. And if you have a large property that has a lot of wetlands, can I affect 2 acres this year and 2 acres next year and 2 acres next year and 2 acres the year after that? It's not terribly clear.
Well, if this is what I think it is, I know that there's places in Brown County that were man-made bodies of water that the DNR now is treating as if wetlands and so forth. And wouldn't this be basically stating, no, they were man-made, they don't count as wetlands, they don't count as...
That's part of it. But the other part is just any old wetland, that if you're applying for certain types of projects, that they have to use a different standard of review now for the application than they used to, as far as whether or not it's allowed to be filled. All right, and then this is the last one. This has more stuff about zoning. So this one actually has a whole lot of stuff that is of interest and concern to us. We're not all that worried about the fact that the county can't enact a development moratorium anymore, because we've never done it. The transfer, title transfer stuff, I don't think we're worried about. About a quarter of the way down the paragraph, the setback line from the ordinary high watermark part with the surveyors having established it is a little bit concerning, because we don't know exactly what that, basically what the legislation said was, if there's a survey that shows an ordinary high watermark, that's the line that we, the county, have to use from which to measure the water setback for whatever it is that's being proposed on that property. And that line does not have to have been one that we okayed previously. The counties are the ones that are supposed to be establishing the ordinary high water mark as the arm of the DNR charged with doing that. So we are very likely going to have situations where there are older surveys, or surveys where we weren't involved, where we didn't get asked to go flag the ordinary high water mark, where we're going to have to use something that is not actually the ordinary high water mark as the line from which we measure the setback. There are also examples, we're not sure, with the water being high, we know of a couple places around the county where the ordinary high water mark that we called, when they first built their house or whatever, is now actually in water as opposed to on land. So it's going to create some interesting situations. And the surveyors, you've talked to several of them, only one of them knew about it. So that's.
I mean, what do you do with, like, I've seen some surveys, old surveys of lots that never actually existed, that were in front of the lot that's above the water, but the lot was intended to be filled later on, but that survey still exists.
I guess if there's something on it that says ordinary high watermark, then
Yeah.
we technically would have to use that. And that it's not clear, I would assume, but it's not entirely clear that, if there's an old survey that shows the ordinary high water mark out here, but then a new one gets done and it's shown here,
I
that
think
we
it's
use
some
the
of the-
newer one, but I don't know.
Like Gillespie's Plat of Idlewild and things like
Yeah.
that are just,
But, so that one,
Who's-
that's gonna be
who's survey of
interesting.
Idlewild?
Gillespie's Plat of Idlewild.
Tell me again, what is the ordinary high water mark?
There's a whole set of, what is it case law, and in the public, is it outlined in the public trust doctrine, or is it separate?
I believe it's within that document.
There's not a hard and fast thing, like you can't go out and shoot an elevation and say that you're at the ordinary high water mark, but when you're on a property, unless it's been disturbed, and then it can be hard to figure out, it's the point where you can tell that from wind and wave and the action of the
Vegetation.
lake, that
Erosional
there's,
marks.
yeah, there's a spot. In a lot of places it's easy to figure out because it's where, the trees stop and then it turns into like rocky beach. In other places like dunes, or if a couple of neighbors have put up, riprap or whatever, it makes it
Changed the
harder to
pattern.
kind of to figure out. But that's basically what it is, where the lake has affected the land to the point where you can, in most cases, go out and draw a line. And that's where we have to measure the 75-foot water setback from. So, go ahead.
The lake in one of its iterations. So a
Yeah.
while ago, your high water mark could be 150 feet, essentially, because we had such a low lake level, and now it could be significantly less, right?
Right, but yeah, I mean, it takes, well,
It doesn't change that frequently. Obviously, that ordinary high water mark is an erosional line, and that presence usually sticks around even during those
Right, so
low
I'm
waters.
saying it isn't always the same amount, but it's
right.
by whatever the lake did at some point.
Yeah,
Right.
and it could be ice shoves, could be like hitting the same spot frequently
Okay.
and then, you know, moving, whatever, but it's generally water, waves and wind and, but for example, so Bailey's Harbor, all the area out near Tuft Point and everything else, when the water was so low a handful of years ago, you know, there were cedars that were springing up on what used to be lake bed.
North Bay is the
Yeah,
classic.
yeah, and everybody, and Ephraim, I mean, those docks weren't even hitting water
Right.
at that point. But, and everyone was asking, like, when are you gonna come out and tell me that my setback's different? Well, now, a lot of those people are applying for riprap permits because the water is slashing it at what the ordinary high water.
I guess
mark
that's
is.
one of my questions, you know, we have historically, for the last 15 years, had a relatively lower water line. It is coming back up again, which does affect where that historical location is, and that's why my question is, in theory, somebody could get their property resurveyed in a wide, you know, in a low water cycle
Right,
that effectively would give them authority to build closer.
right. So what we talked about at the staff meeting and what I've directed the zoning administrators to do is that since the property owner now has the legal right, if there's a watermark, ordinary high watermark shown on the survey, they have the right to build 75 feet from that line, where that line is in the field. But if they go out to do an inspection and, well, the other trick is gonna sometimes maybe be finding that line if we think it's wrong in the field. But if they go out and think that this isn't right, the survey does not match what's here on the land, that we talk to the property owner and say, look, the regulation is that you're supposed to be 75 feet from the ordinary high water mark. This is where we think the ordinary high water mark is, so this is where your setback would be. If you want to use the survey line, this is where it's going to be, and just know that down the line, if the legislation changes or something else, your structure might become non-conforming at that point, and then let them decide what they want to do. And I would think if they've got room that most people are going to be scared off by the potentially becoming non-conforming, that
Or the simple fact that, hey, my insurance is higher because I'm a lot closer than I should be.
maybe. And Sue pointed out something at staff meeting yesterday when we were talking about this too, that it's going to get really confusing for averaging too. So if you've got the actual ordinary high water mark line on a property, and then the surveyed one that somebody decided that they definitely did want to use for their new building that they're going to put in, and then now the neighbor wants to build, what line do we use to average on the neighbor's property? Do we use the real one, or do we use the one they went with? So it's, yeah, we'll keep you informed as to what's going on there. Couple other things this did. One thing that was a big loophole that didn't make any sense that was left by the budget bill was that I can take my non-conforming structure and knock it down and rebuild it in the same footprint and even make it taller. But my addition that I may have had put on that building through a variance process. So my non-conforming structure, I have an old house that was there before zoning. 20 years ago, I applied for a variance to add on to the back of that house. So I still don't meet the water setback, but I got the variance to add on. The budget bill, what it did was say, you can knock the house down, the original house down, and rebuild that, but you still would have needed a variance to knock the other part down that was already authorized by a variance. So this says that if you'd already gotten a variance for something before July 13th of 2015, which was when the budget bill went into effect, that you can replace the whole thing. We have to allow now, basically, if a boathouse has a flat roof, a deck on top of it. Previously that was precluded. You don't have to, if you don't feel like it, make your conditional use permit authorization or denials consistent with the comprehensive plan. You're not prohibited from paying attention to the comprehensive plan, but you don't have to if you don't want to.
Once again, a product that so many people have worked on.
Well, right, yeah.
That became a moot point.
Yeah. And there actually at the very end of this packet, Brian Ohm did one of his newsletters where he analyzes that consistency requirement that makes it as clear as he thinks it is that you are allowed to do that. It's just that you don't have to. The county, well, anybody is now prohibited from enacting a down zoning ordinance. So that's when somebody's going from like a commercial district to a residential district, or a commercial or residential district to an agricultural district. So a district that allows less, maybe less dense and or less intense or larger lots or whatever. You're not allowed to do that anymore unless the 2/3 of the members of the governing body vote in favor of that, or it's approved by the landowner. I don't think we've had all that many situations where either the RPC or town has been trying to rezone a ton of people that didn't want it to happen, but now you can't do it unless you have the 2/3 of the county board voting in favor of it. And then, oh yeah, this last one's interesting. The very last item here. So if a person goes to, somebody's taking the planning department to court because they don't agree with our interpretation of, well, it would go to the Board of Adjustment and then to court. They don't agree with our interpretation of the ordinance. Courts are directed to, this wording, I don't like this wording compared to the way the bill is, but they're basically directed to find, if at all possible, if there's ambiguity in favor of the property owner. That's what it comes down to. So those are the only ones that I wanted to.
And you said we have that email on here.
Yeah, I didn't email it until like yesterday.
Okay.
So
All right.
Yeah, about 10:15.
And I can save this.
Mariah, would you say that last statement again?
Basically what it says is that the court system is now required if there's an ambiguity in a zoning regulation, and so the planning department is saying, well, we've always interpreted this way and applied it this way, and the property owner says, well, I don't think it means that, I think it means this. The court has to find in favor of the property owner.
The non-expert
Has
one-time
to,
event.
has to find?
I don't know how they can tell the court that they have to do that, or how tell a judge
that
that they
was
have
my
to do that, but
question.
that's what it says.
So they're telling the court what to do?
They're legislating off
Yeah.
the reverse of legislating.
It's right, yeah, it's like, they're judiciating.
Judiciating off the bench, yeah.
Thank you, I just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify that because it sounds, well, the whole, never mind.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and then, yeah, so that's it. And then, like I said, he's got a couple of, Brian Ohm does sort of these newsletter things. I do forward these, so you've probably gotten emails over the past 12 months about a lot of these things, but now it's all in one place, which is really nice. to
On here,
have all this stuff.
but not our home computer, or both?
Probably both, but I
Probably.
mean, like, I usually, UW Extension, Brian Ohm actually, I think, sends out like a monthly legislative update, and I usually forward these to. But so now, if you were inclined to, or you had been keeping those, you can probably dump the ones from the last year and just save this, because this has everything in it. So that was all I had, unless anybody's got any questions
All
about it.
right. Moving on to 7.0, budget matter.
There's also nothing in your, this is just an FYI, there's nothing in your packet because we're not asking for anything.
Okay, that was easy.
Last year, we put in for the 2016 budget that we wanted, if necessary, an ArcGIS license dedicated solely to the GIS mapping specialist position, but only if there wasn't one already available, and so I'm putting in that same kind of if-then request, but that's it.
So why don't you ask for 10 grand so the IS committee can deny it? We need something to reduce his budget by.
All right, future meeting schedule. June 2nd, I have on there as a question mark, and I didn't break down last time, it's still,
That is
we're
a
not
no.
gonna
Have a
need
closed
No
that.
June, no June 2nd.
So we have June 16th.
Yep.
Four
I don't
cases.
know how I got it, but I
Yeah.
can't get to
How many?
closing it.
Four
Four.
cases.
None of them, at least 2 or 3 of them are not major.
Okay, June 16th,
So yeah, June 2nd, no meeting. June
Okay.
16th, 4 hearings.
I may not be here.
Okay. On the 16th.
RPC, 2
And then-
PM.
And then we are not going to have a meeting on July 7th either.
Okay.
So we'll have 1 in June and 1 in July. It's just the timing of the cases is working out that way, and the timing of Grant and I trying to work on the ordinance
It's a right
revisions.
click
June 16th, 2 PM.
thing, but I didn't know what those
Don,
meant.
you will be here for the 16th of June, and Mark and Sue?
Yes.
Okay, and you might not be here.
I probably will not be here.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotta look at it.
By this
Alright.
time, I plan to be a little bit on the drunker side with.
Oh, not a problem.
campground.
Okay,
That's on
all that
record
being
here.
said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, we are adjourned. Okay, and that was,